All right, welcome back, game designers. This is going to be changing gears quite a bit this week, as well as into the next several weeks. Um, I've been struggling with this issue of how can I teach you the things that I need to about design if I can't require that you have a computer at home. So I appreciate those of you who have been following along as best you can, but I really want to be able to go into some design concepts and things as we come into the end of the year that will be really helpful for you. So what we're going to do for the next 6 weeks is we're going to be making a game. So you might be thinking, well, I don't have a computer. What does that look like for me? It's a really good question. So this game does not necessarily have to be designed in Unity. We've hit most of the marks that we need to in Unity, and what I want us to focus on is design. So if you do have a computer that you can do in Unity, that's great. I encourage you to do that. If you can't, then that's fine. You can still follow along with everything that we're going to do over the next 6 weeks without having access to a computer. So what type of game you're going to make is entirely up to you. It can be a pen and paper game, it can be a tabletop game, it can be a card game, or it can be a game that you make in Unity or Unreal Engine if you want to jump into that. Whatever you want to do. I'm sure that some of you are going to ask me if you can work with other people. That's absolutely. I encourage you to do that. It's a great way to stay in touch with people, especially right now where we're not able to stay in touch with many people. If you want to get contact information for some of your classmates, let me know and I will see if I can do that for you. Or work with people who are at your house or your friends. It's a good way to communicate with them, work together on something that you might have a shared interest with them, and be able to spend time with people without being with them. So it's a good opportunity for that. So you might ask, what is required for it? It's a really good question as well. So first thing that I want you to prioritize is it being your own idea. I don't want you to just go and create some basically a clone of another game. That's not what this is about. I want you to be creating your own idea. It's okay if you repurpose concepts or ideas from other games. So if you're doing a tabletop game using concepts from stuff like D&D or Munchkin or Magic the Gathering or whatever it is that you're wanting to make, but the core concept should be yours. So nobody has a trademark on rolling dice, but the way that you use them and the way that they're incorporated into your game is entirely up to you, and it needs to be your design. I encourage you as well, if you're making a video game, try to keep it simple. We've been working in groups of three or four. If you're going to be working on this on your own, try to make it as simple as you can to make your life easier. It can be 2D or 3D, any genre you want. Just keep in mind that you want it to be as polished as you can. So whether it is a 2D game, a 3D game that you're making in Unity, or a tabletop game that you're designing, a card game, a tabletop RPG sort of game, whatever you're doing, you want it to be as polished as it can be at the end of this time. So make sure that you are planning appropriately and not biting off more than you can really chew. Each week we're going to have a set of milestones that we're trying to hit. So the first week, that is this week, is going to be planning and pre-production. I'll talk about what that means in just a little bit. Week 2 and 3 is the production, so actually creating the game. Week 4 is testing. Week 5 is pre-launch and launch, and week 6 is post-production, and that should get us pretty close to the end of the year here. So with that, let's go ahead and take a look at what each of these weeks is going to entail. So the first week, that is this week, is going to be the planning and pre-production stage. So this is really the ideas on the board stage, brainstorming, trying to get your concept sort of put into words. So I want you to focus on what is it that you are building? Who is it that you're making it for? What platform are you making it for? So if you're making a Unity game, you're making it for PC or for mobile or something like that. If you are making a tabletop game, then it is a analog, it's a tabletop game. I want you to get into storyboarding, so creating a storyboard of what the progression of the game looks like, storytelling, so what story are you trying to tell, any technology that you might need to get this job done, and start getting into prototyping and scheduling milestones. So once you start to get concept of what your game is going to be, you'll know how much work you need to do, the types of things that you need to do. So if you're designing a card game, for example, you would want to schedule out, the different types of cards that you're going to be making, how many cards you're going to have at the end of each week or something like that. Week 2 is the actual production. So start to model out what it is that you're making. So I should also say, this is the same whether you're making a tabletop game or you're making a game in Unity. Right, all these steps are going to be very, very similar. So starting to build out a model of what your game is going to look like, do the design. So this is where you're actually making the game. Any audio visual effects. This includes, if you're doing a tabletop game, actually designing the pieces for your game. Any minis or cards or anything like that. You don't want them to just be cutouts on a piece of paper. That's good for testing, right? For play testing. But what do you want the finished product of the back of the card to look like? That sort of thing. Physics, mechanics. If you're building a 2D game with like a grappling hook, like that would be something that you would put under mechanics. How do you expect that to work, right? Actually getting all that stuff done and the actual development of those things. Week 4 is testing. So you want to identify any issues that you have with mechanics, look for exploits, test for balance. Is the game too easy or is it too hard? Is the game fun? So if the game isn't fun, you need to identify why and figure out what you can do to make it fun. If the game is fun, but there are some parts that are really punishing or stuff like that, you want to be able to identify those and think about how you can fix it. And then probably the most important thing when doing any sort of game like this is to try to identify and fix any dominant strategies. So we've all played a game where there is just one best strategy to get it done. An example, a really simple example is tic-tac-toe, right? The middle space in tic-tac-toe is just the most powerful position in the board. And so going in the middle of the board at the very beginning it's a dominant strategy. So trying to identify and fix any dominant strategies that you might have in your game so that it is, you're not just ignoring mechanics and things in your game because you worked on those. You put those mechanics in, you want people to use them, not to just find the one easiest way to get the game done. Week 5, pre-launch and launch. So get some testers. So week 4 is you testing it, looking for these issues, looking for exploits, stuff like that. Week 5 is having other people try it out. So this can be your family, friends, whatever. Obviously you want to make sure that you're practicing safe social distancing and all that good stuff. So, but if you're building a game, play it with your siblings, play it with your parents, whoever you're with. We're obviously not going to be dealing with marketing and stuff like that, but I want you to think about what would your marketing materials look like. And we'll get into that a little bit later. Final bug fixes. So when you have these people that are testing it, what are some issues that they encountered that you think you need to address? And then finally putting the polish on your game and getting it ready for release. So in week 4, you'll be doing testing. This is, if you're having a card game, you would have a bunch of cards written on a piece of paper. Week 5, you're getting those cards finished, their correct wording, and put with the backings and design and all that stuff that you want for your launch. And then finally, week 6 is post-production. So this is after stuff is done. Are there any patches, any hot fixes you need to make? issues that people found with the build of your game, issues with balance. There's something that, when you built it, you didn't realize that you left in, fully automatic guns or something like that. And then finishing with a postmortem. So what did you do well? What did you, need to improve on in the future, and that sort of thing. So that's what this is going to look like for the next 6 weeks. So let's go into a little bit more detail as to what exactly I'm expecting you to do for week 1, that is planning and pre-production. So at the end of this week, I want you to send me a document, a summary of the above information. So all this information on the sheet here, I want you to tell me what is it that you are building. If you're building a physical game, if you're building a game for PC, what is it that you're building? Who is it designed for? And what platform is it designed for? I want you to start doing some storyboarding, so thinking about what the game looks like. What does the character progression look like? And you should notice that all of these things are applicable to all different styles of games. So this is not just applicable to video games, but it is also applicable to board games and stuff like that. So trying to make this as broad as possible, so that if you don't have access to a powerful computer at home, you can still follow along with this and get the same stuff out of it. 5 is storytelling. So thinking about the story that you're trying to tell with your characters. The example I give here is Monopoly even tells a story. What is the story that you're trying to tell to your players? How are you going to make them feel it? Thinking about Monopoly, and if you've been sitting down at the table playing Monopoly for a couple of hours with your family or your friends, and landing on somebody else's hotel, that feeling of going bankrupt, right? Having to decide which of your properties you're going to sell. That's a story. That's a story of an individual, and whatever game you're trying to make, we want to make it as relatable and have that sort of storytelling involved. Technology needed. So whatever you're going to make, you want to do it well. So I want you to create as polished of a game as you can. So what tools will you need to do this? If you are doing a card game, you might want to be able to, draw some stuff on a pad and paper, or draw something electronically and print it, if that's something that you're capable of. What sort of technology are you going to need to accomplish this and make it as clean and aesthetically pleasing as possible? And then you can start to do some prototyping. So this is not, at all getting finished product at the end of week 1, but thinking about, cutting out cards and characters, writing some sample code for, how does a grappling hook work, and looking up stuff like that. Just starting to dip your toe into the mechanics of your game and how it's all going to tie together. And then finally, I want you to think about scheduling milestones. So using something like a Trello board or similar, you can put the stuff in a notepad if you want to, but just think about all of the things that you're going to need to make over the next 6 weeks, or next 5 weeks, because week 6 is the postmortem. But what are all the things that you're going to need to do? It's going to be different for each different game, so that's why it's not super specific here. But what are all the things that you're going to need to do? What are all the things you're going to need to make? And when do you need to make them? So giving yourself some deadlines, some time schedules to meet. And then finally, send me a summary of this information to my email address. So it's matthew.edelman@ksd.org, so that you can get credit for completing this week's work. All right, so a few more important things that I need to talk about here at the end of the video. So the first thing is, I've had a lot of questions about the grading policy, how the stuff is going to work. So I want to address that as easily as I can. So basically, the way that we have been told is that we can continue to grade student work at this point. However, your grades cannot go down. So if you have a B right now and then you don't do any of the work, you can basically get a B for the rest of the semester. It's really nice for those of you that have an A. It means that you aren't forced to learn anything, which is kind of unfortunate. But I know that a lot of you are continuing to follow along, which I really appreciate. There is one bit of a wrinkle, though, where we can't offer you the college credit through CBC if you haven't proven that you hit all of the core competencies of the class. And some of those things are covered in the last several weeks, as well as into this final project. So if you want to receive the college credit through CBC, you need to satisfy the following. First, you need to have gotten a 85 or better for both semesters, so you know if that applies to you. And second, you need to prove that you learned all of the core competencies of the class. And what that means is, if you want to receive the credit for CBC, you have to complete the work throughout the rest of the school year. And I understand that that is a challenge for some of you, and that's why I've tried to make the assignments as useful and doable on a computer that if whether or not you have a computer at home. So if that is a problem, then reach out to me, and I am happy to talk about it further. So with that, I forgot to last week, but here is my beard update. It's filling in a little bit, looking a little bit better. And this is Oakley. He's my little buddy for when I record. He always comes up here and sits with me as I record. So with that, I'm gonna go ahead and let you go, and I will see you all or talk to you all next week.